Nomboniso Gasa. She's a researcher, analyst, and public speaker on gender, politics, and leadership in Southern Africa. Welcome. Thanks for being on our show.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hosting me.
You know, it's striking. Just last year, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, said that the legacy of apartheid remains a defining feature of our land. It has been 30 years. For him to say that it is still a defining feature is saying a lot.
Indeed. I mean, South Africa is one of the highest, is one of the countries with highest inequality in the world. And a lot of that has to do with the legacy of apartheid, that even after 1994, we still see it reflected in where people live, how people live, and the kind of resources that are available, resources that include education, access to healthcare, and such basic necessities.
You know, it's hard to believe sometimes when you see a year like 1990, you always think of it as being such a short time ago. Then you realize it's been 30 years since that point in time. So I'm sure for many people there, it still feels like apartheid was just yesterday. But it also means that there's a whole generation that are now fully adults who have not lived beneath it. But are their futures still shaped by it?
Absolutely. You know, apartheid was a system based on racial segregation and racial oppression, but it was also an economic, social, and cultural system. And every aspect of it permeates the South African society even today. Even though we have a new constitution since 1996, and we have seen, massive strides that have been made by various governments since 1994, the very foundations of South Africa remain defined and scarred by apartheid, because apartheid, in the final analysis, was a system which permeated every structure of our society.
Yeah, and you often hear about the strides that have been made along racial lines, but that South Africa is still considered the most economically unequal country in the world. With this current government, are there methods, are there plans of attack that seem to be breaking that a bit?
You know, a number of issues were not addressed in 1994 and were left to the new constitutional order to try and address some of these. Part of that was reparations. It was never addressed. Also, we are finding now as a society that there's a lot of pushback, especially right-wing pushback, that tries to justify what had happened and basically argues that white people worked very hard for what they have. So it's very difficult for people to give up the privileges that they have. There also have been very mixed and disappointing results of the post-apartheid government in South Africa since 1994. So the structural nature of the economy remains. And as long as that is not addressed, we don't find a lasting solution to deal with that. We're going to have these levels of inequality. And one of the biggest determinants of inequality in South Africa remains race.
Right. And what you find around the world is when you have a wide gap in economic prosperity, it can take generations to heal. Is South Africa prepared to work through those generations to make this at least somewhat of a more equal society?
I think what you've just raised about generation is at the core of what needs to happen in this country. So you have people who have had intergenerational wealth and intergenerational privilege. It's mostly white people, and then you have the majority of the country that is also affected by the flip coin, the side of that, which is inequality, which is poverty, which is impoverishment at so many different levels, including just the culture of poverty that we keep passing on to young people. So as you talked earlier about a generation of young South Africans who didn't live under apartheid, that is true. But unfortunately, most of those young people have inherited the legacy of apartheid, which either puts them in an advantaged position or in a disadvantaged position. The challenge, I think, for the South African government is to use the tools that are available to the government, the constitution, the structures that can help to build a much more egalitarian society. And I think that some of the problems that bears the government at the moment, corruption, internal wranglings within the ruling party, and all these issues, they also distract government from the key issues of the day.
Got it. All right, great points. Nomboniso Gasa, thanks so much for your insights on this.
You're welcome.